I mean, he's 25 and he's pretty, he doesn't like just one type of music. He's pretty, diversified. He likes kind of different things.
Well, I could probably recommend something. It's just plain good.
I've always loved records. I've always been into music. I'm a musician as well, so it was just a natural extension of who I am to have a record store. I've always had lots of records since I was a little kid. I've never gotten rid of any of the records that I had when I was growing up, and it's always kind of been a passion of mine. I've just been a real music fan. Having a record store has always been something I'd like to do. When I first opened, I sort of thought that most of the customers that I would have would be older people. They'd be people like me, 40s and up, with the odd younger person maybe. But I was really surprised as the store opened, and it just became a much younger demographic, like 15, even some like kids, like 10, 11-year-old. There was a kid that was in with his dad this weekend, and it was awesome. He knew so much about music. He might have been 9 or 10 years old, and he was flipping through the records and pulling out like Styx records, all the stuff that I knew when I was a little kid, and he knew all about it, and it was just really fun to help him because he had records that he was looking for, and for me to rifle through and see if I could find stuff for him and stuff that he wanted that I wrote down, so I'll call him if I get it. And it's just really exciting to see a little kid like that so into music. And it's actually kind of turned on its head a little bit because I do have some customers who are in their 50s and 60s, and those people are getting into the new stuff. So you've got people in their 50s that are buying records that are done by bands who might be in their 20s and making really awesome music. My father was the general manager at CKSO, so we had a collection of records already in the house when I was growing up. So there was a couple of thousand records there, and there was anything from Bob Dylan to Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra and Miles Davis. They were into really into Broadway, and there was a lot of musicals and that. So it was a real mix of lots of different things. And then when I was, about 8 or 9 years old, I started finding my own music, listening to the radio more. My uncle used to come visit us, and he was really into Pink Floyd and The Who, and he sort of exposed me to those bands by buying records for while he was there and leaving them with me. So that's kind of the style of music that I got into growing up, and it was, like all of those sort of classic bands from the era, from the late 70s. I feel like there's something special about records, and I don't actually know what it is. I think there's a romance to them, and people will say different things like, well, it's the artwork, the size of the record. But I think that there's more to it than that. There's just kind of something tangible about a record, something permanent about a record, that it's your copy of a record, that almost like it's got a life of its own, because with every play that you do of the record, it sort of starts to deteriorate. So the record eventually, you can wear it out by listening to it. And it's almost like your record collection is a reflection of your tastes, in terms of you can look at your record collection and remember being into certain things and where you were when you were into that kind of music. And I think that there's something that records are able to do that, and other formats just don't seem to do that. And they're even starting to repress records now that were originally done on CD but never were done on vinyl. For example, 90s stuff like Pearl Jam, maybe Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins came out in an era where there wasn't really very many records being pressed anymore. It was the mid-90s. People were sort of thinking, okay, vinyl's done now, it's all about CDs. And so now they're actually pressing vinyl to replace people's CD collections. So it's kind of flipped around a little bit. When I think about high schools now, probably only about 5% of the high school population are into records. The rest of them that are into music at all are happy with a download. They're okay with an iPod and MP3s. But it seems like the cool kids are getting into records. And this is something that's come from customers too, where they've said that when they buy the record, they tend to listen to it more, and they tend to get to know it better, because once they put the needle down, it plays from the beginning to the end of the first side, and they can't just skip songs really easily. They hear the entire side, and you end up listening to the entire album, and you start to discover songs that you never maybe would have given as much notice to, and sometimes those songs become some of your favorites. Like songs that are hits on records like Beatles records, where you look at a certain album like Magical Mystery Tour, you look at the track listing and there's all these big hits on there, but then there's these other songs that people don't really know, but people who listen to records know those songs, really, really like those songs, and often will even like those songs more than the big hits, because there's something personal, there's a personal connection to them, like, I discovered that song. I used to like listening with headphones, and I'd really get get into it. I would just sit there and I would read the back of the record and read, just absorb everything in the record and the sleeve and listen to it while I was doing all of that. And it really connects you with the band, it connects you with the record.